On the afternoon of the 22nd of May 2013, a British Army soldier, Fusilier Lee Rigby of the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, was attacked and killed by Islamic terrorists outside the Royal Artillery Barracks in Woolwich, southeast London. Rigby was off duty and walking along Wellington Street when he was attacked. The terrorists ran him down with a car and then used knives and a cleaver to stab and hack him to death. The men dragged Rigby's body out into the road and remained at the scene until the police arrived, informing passers-by that they had murdered Rigby to avenge the Muslims killed by the British Army. Unarmed police arrived at the scene 9 minutes after the emergency call was received and set up a cordon. Armed police officers arrived 5 minutes later. The assailants, both armed with a cleaver and brandishing a gun, charged at the police, who fired shots that wounded them both. They were apprehended and taken to separate hospitals. Both the terrorists were of Nigerian descent, raised as Christians and converted to Islam. On December 19th, 2013, both the attackers were found guilty of Rigby's murder. And on 26th of February 2014, they were both sentenced to life imprisonment, with one of them being given a whole life order and the other being told to serve 45 years. The attack was condemned by political and Muslim leaders in the United Kingdom and international press. Now, this was a case I remember. Everyone remembers it. It's one of those things you kind of just remember seeing it on the news and hearing about it. We were at a time when terror attacks were coming a little bit too frequently. You know, every sort of 2 or 3 years, something nasty would happen either here or in another country. And this was just one of those more shocking ones because it happened on the streets of London in front of everyone. And it wasn't just a wild attack where they just started swinging for people. They were calculated in what they wanted to do. They'd driven around several times waiting and looking for a soldier to do this to. Now, a lot of the time I kind of have the view with terrorists that they're cowardly. And again, this was a cowardly attack, you know. But at least it's aimed in the right direction. Now, let me just explain that, as in a lot of the other terror attacks just go out with a couple of knives these days and they go and stab a few tourists up on the bridge and things like that. Or they go running into a school, or, you know, they go into a mosque or a synagogue or something like this, and they commit ungodly acts against people who are just trying to go about their day. Now, I'm not saying that Lee Rigby asked for it, but quite often I find myself asking, like, why don't these boys go down and try and pick a fight at the barracks? Why don't these terrorists, if they think they're so hard and they've got a just cause against the British Army, why don't they go down and they try and pick a fight with the soldiers and see how far that gets them? So at least I can understand in some sense why they've targeted a soldier. And it was one of the Queen's soldiers as well. You know, he's a Royal Guard, he's done his tours, and he was working at the Tower of London, I believe, at the time. He'd just finished a shift, coming home, he's wearing a charity hoodie. The guy is as good as it gets. He's a nice guy, he's got a family, kids, everything. He's just, you know, he's just wrong place, wrong time. You know? But yeah, it's a shocking one. And today I just thought I'd have a look at the instances surrounding the murder, but also a little bit more about the attackers as well, because they're, you know, as much as I don't want to give these fucking cowards any kind of spotlight at all, it is interesting just seeing a little bit of their background and where and how they've come to what they're doing. So let's have a look. First of all, before we give them any kind of daylight, let's have a look at Lee. The soldier killed in the attack was 25-year-old Lee James Rigby, a drummer and machine gunner in the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers. Now, obviously, he's 25 there. When I was 25, I was banged up. Funny enough, I spent most of my time banged up. You know, he was doing something worthwhile for his country, and I was being a little terrorist myself. Rigby was from Middleton in Greater Manchester, was born in 1987, had served in Cyprus, Germany and Afghanistan before becoming a recruiter and assisting with the duties at the Tower of London. He was attacked when he was returning to the barracks from working at the Tower. Rigby married in 2007 and had a 2-year-old son, but had separated from his wife. He was engaged to a new fiancée at the time of his death. A post-mortem examination showed that Rigby had died from multiple incised wounds. So, you know, he may have survived the car crash, but it was the stabbings, and they tried to behead him at the side of the road, like these fucking animals do. Rigby supported British Armed Forces charity Help for Heroes. He was wearing a hoodie supporting the charity when he was attacked. In the 5 days after his death, the charity received more than 600,000 in donations. Rigby was given a military funeral. Guys, he's choking me up just reading this. Rigby was given a military funeral at the Bury Parish Church on the 12th of July 2013. The service was attended by several thousand people, including the present and former soldiers, the Prime Minister David Cameron, and the Mayor of London Boris Johnson. A private burial service was held at nearby Middleton Cemetery. The first permanent memorial to him was installed in 2014 at the Valley Football Stadium, less than 1 mile from his murder. It's awful. I mean, I know, you know, what we're doing in Afghanistan and Iraq wasn't just. It was, these are the stupid wars. You know, it doesn't help us in any way, shape or form. And you can see the way that the country has changed since. I mean, obviously we've had 9/11 coming up recently, and, you know, there's so many conspiracy theories around 9/11. And then obviously everything that's really happened afterwards is in, you know, like the war in Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq. It's created this refugee crisis that we're still dealing with now. You know, plenty of people just pouring into our country because of the conditions in their own country because of the wars that have happened. So yeah, all of this is just, I can understand in some way, you know, innocent people are dying in those countries, but that, you know, an eye for an eye isn't what anybody wants, really. Looking back at the attack again, the attack took place shortly before 2:20 on Wellington Street, near the perimeter of the Royal Artillery barracks where Rigby was stationed. Rigby had arrived at the Woolwich Arsenal at 2:10 and was walking down Wellington Street towards the barracks. While Rigby was crossing the road to get to a shop, two men who were later identified as Michael Adibolajo and Michael Adibalawi drove a Vauxhall Tigra at him at 30 to 40 miles an hour, knocking him to the ground. They attacked Rigby with knives and a cleaver, attempting to behead him. Immediately after the attack, several passers-by stood over Rigby's body to protect him from further injury. Now, this is one of the interesting things about this case, and it's just one of those interesting things about life in general, really. I don't know her, but it's one of my good friend's girlfriend's mum was one of the people who sat down next to the body. So it says here, immediately after the attack, passers-by stood by Rigby's body to protect him from further injury. Now, they name her Ingrid, it's a very difficult name to say, Ingrid Loyu Kennett, a Cub Scout leader from Cornwall, disembarking from a passing bus with the intention of rendering first aid, saw what she had thought was a road incident. On discovering that the victim was dead, she engaged with one of the assailants in conversation. The man said he was responsible for killing the man on the ground, a British soldier who had attacked, he claimed, and killed Muslims in Iraq and Afghanistan. She asked one of the men to hand over his weapons, but he refused. Now, isn't that one of those weird things? Now, if you remember back to the case, they were actively asking for people to get their phones out and record. They wanted this to be a incident that was recorded and shown on telly, because a lot of these terror attacks these days, you know, it's the notoriety they want. They want a big, flashy show thing. So, you know, people were scared. I can only imagine if I was in London on that day, I would have been if I was with my partner, I would have been taking her as fast as I can in the other direction, because normally what they do is they start just randomly stabbing people, don't they? But in this instance, they were just stood there calm, talking. They were talking to people. They were handling their knives and stuff, but they were just talking to people in the crowd, and they were encouraging people to get their phones out and record it. And here we go on. It says, in a video shot by a bystander, A.D. Balajo said, "The only reason we have killed this man today is because Muslims are dying daily by British soldiers." He said, Also, he gave a bystander at the scene a handwritten 2-page note which set out the justifications for his actions. The assailants, I can't say that word, can I? The assailants remained at the scene and asked bystanders to call the police. The police received the first 999 call about an assault at 2:20, and unarmed police were deployed. A subsequent 999 calls said the attackers had a firearm, and then armed police were ordered to the scene at 2:24. Unarmed police arrived at 2:29, set up a cordon, but remained behind it. Authorised firearms officers arrived at 14:34. The two men, one brandishing a cleaver, the other one a revolver, charged at the police. Armed police fired 8 times, and both men were wounded. They were arrested and taken to separate hospitals. A revolver, knives, and a cleaver were seized at the scene. The victim, Rigby, was pronounced dead and formally identified. The revolver was later determined to be non-functioning 90-year-old weapon. Adi Bawali pointed a gun at responding armed police officers who opened fire and shot off one of his thumbs. He lost a thumb in the deal. So again, it looks like they wanted to be possibly killed. Why else would you charge armed police? They wanted to be heroes. They wanted to be martyrs. But they're just cowards, scumbags. So having a quick look into the profile of Michael Adjei-Belayo, and I don't apologise for saying his name wrong, I'm not even trying to say it right, born in Lambeth to a Christian family. Now this is one of the things that intrigues me, is because essentially he's one of our own. You know, they come from Nigerian backgrounds, but he's born in Lambeth, you know, to a Christian family. He went to Marshall's Park School and Havering Sixth Form College, and then went to study sociology at Greenwich. Possibly just showing that sociology is a pointless degree. He was then he had a history of involvement with radical Islamist activities and had been arrested at a violent protest and then later released. According to Anjem Chowdhury, a radical Muslim cleric, Adi Bajola, whatever his name is, converted to Islam in 2003 and was linked to the outlawed Islamic group Al-Mahajiron. In 2006, Adjei-Belayo was arrested outside the Old Bailey during a protest about the trial of Miznar Rahman. In 2009, he spoke at a demonstration against the English Defence League, organised by Unite Against Fascism, and he was recorded saying, "Don't be scared of them. Do not be scared of the police or the cameras. You are only here to please Allah. You are not here for any other reason. If you are here just for a fight, please leave our ranks. We only want those who are sincere to Allah. Purify your intention." In 2010, he was arrested in Kenya with 5 others. He travelled using a British passport in the name of Michael Amidilius. Sorry, I'm not even going to attempt to say it. Boniface Mwangi, head of the Kenyan's anti-terrorism unit, said he believed that Adjei-Belayo was planning to train with a militant group linked to Al-Qaeda. He was released to British authorities in Kenya and deported. The British Foreign Legion office confirmed a British foreign national was arrested in Kenya in 2010 and was given a consular assistance. No charges were filed against him at that time. A friend of his said he complained about persistent questioning by British security services, MI5, specifically concerning his knowledge of certain individuals. He said that MI5 had alleged to have asked him to work with them, and he'd refused. He also says that he claimed to have been tortured and sexually assaulted by Kenyan troops after his arrest. I mean, you know, that's the way she goes, isn't it? Way she goes. He was released from hospital on the 31st of May and taken into police custody. The following day, he was charged with Rigby's murder, 2 charges of attempted to murder police officers and possession of a firearm. At a court appearance on the June 3rd, he asked to be known as Muhajid Abu Hamza. On July 17th, he lost 2 of his front teeth while being restrained by 5 prison officers. Now, this is where the justice comes in, and for once, I'm I'm going to give the prison officers a little pat on the back here. I have no beef with the prison service in general. You know, I caused all of my own problems. It was, you know, I haven't got any. As you can tell from my videos, I never once sit here slagging off officers or the prison service in general. But I'm going to give him a little pat on the back here because 5 of them, while restraining him, managed to kick his teeth out. They were suspended while an investigation took place, and it turned out they had no charges to answer. So, yeah, just one of those things. He tripped and fell and landed on a boot by the sound of things. The other little fuckhead, Michael Adibawale, he attended Kidbrooke School, later studying at the University of Greenwich with Adibajalo. His mother is a probation officer and his father was a member of staff at the Nigerian High Commission. So, you know, a lot of these things where people go back and they say, oh, I blame the parents. I mean, you couldn't have got, you know, more law-abiding than those 2 guys, probation officer and Nigerian High Commission. It looks like this radicalization of people, and this just, they go down the wrong path, and they find themselves in the world of trouble in this dark, cowardly act of terrorism. His parents separated when he was young, and he converted to Islam in 2009, adopting the name Ishmael. He was convicted of drug dealing offences in 2009 and sentenced to 15 months in prison. So, I mean, I could understand if they were from Iraq or Afghanistan, but they're not. They're little local boys. You know, they've got African roots, but they're not moaning about conditions in Africa. They're moaning about conditions in Afghanistan and Iraq. You know, cowardly attacks. Rightly or wrongly, you know, we are over there doing what we're doing. Our British Army's over there doing what it's doing. We don't have any control over that. You know, go and pick a fight with the government if you want. You know, go and become an MP and try and change shit that way if you want to, if you really feel that strongly. You never don't have a voice. It's just whether you can be bothered to put the work in. But these cowards ran down someone in the street and tried to cut his head off. Like I say, they're serving a 45-year term and a whole life term now. The one serving the whole life term, Ajibaleo or something, whatever his name is, he is still trying to radicalise people in prison, and he's been banned from all other groups. And you know, you'll see in the papers that he's been banned from going to yoga because these little niche groups. I mean, it was a lot like that in prison. So if we wanted to speak to someone who was on another wing, you go to church, because there's one church session every Sunday, and every wing comes down, and they all go into the same bit in the church. So you can go and meet up and link with other people from other sides of the prison. Now you're all sort of searched and stuff, so you can't, you know, you can pass items, but that's not what it's about. But it's more like just going and talking, passing information, chatting to your friends, you know, just getting something, you know, messages to and from. But yeah, it's all done through the church. So you can imagine a yoga group is going to be, again, quite specialist, and it's going to be people from all over the prison coming in for this one yoga session. They don't do sort of yoga sessions for each wing, essentially. So, and yoga sessions in jail are pretty unique anyway. It's just something that you'll find that there's people on the outside who want to think, oh, you know, but yoga would do so much good for inmates. You know, it gives them a chance to be enlightened and all that. And it's like, no one in prison gives a fuck about yoga. They just want to go and talk to their friends on other wings, or, you know, carry on being an Islamic terrorist. So today, I wanted to profile the inmate, but I couldn't profile the inmate without talking about the cowardly act that happened to Lee Rigby. And Lee Rigby is the one that we should be remembering, not these cowardly terrorists. So, yeah, it's become more of a profile of the victim than it has the assailants. I hope these guys never see the light of day, and I hope they suffer in prison. Thanks very much. I'll speak to you again another time.